So this afternoon for this panel, I have a few questions, but we will be taking questions from the audience. I'm going to encourage the panel to make comments and ask each other questions if you should choose to do so. And we will be taking comments and questions from those people out in internet land, okay? Globally, we've got global people watching us. So we will have questions from all of those areas. I'm going to start, though, by asking our presenters. It's been a very incredibly wonderful, full, and wisdom-filled few days. Is there anything that you would like to add and share with the participants that you thought about after you got off the stage? I always think of something later. Oh, I should have. So, please go ahead.
There are a couple stories I thought about sharing during my presentation, but didn't get a chance, and they come from a Hasidic master named Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who lived in late 1700s, early 1800s in Ukraine. And he was known to, when he had guests over, to ask them to tell him stories. And in his own words, he would change these stories so that he could hear the cry of the tale itself as he retold it. So this might not be exactly how he told it, but the two stories are as follows. So the first one, there was a poor peddler who lived on the outskirts of Prague, and he lived in an old, broken down home with a rickety door. And he would sell his wares during the day. And at night, he would be tired, and he was growing older. He was concerned about essentially his retirement when he was no longer able to do what he did for a living. And one night, he wasn't normally a praying man, but he let out a very sincere prayer. He said, if anyone's listening, I'd really appreciate some guidance. And that night, he had one of those dreams, very vivid. And in his dream, he saw a palace in Vienna. And next to the palace was a bridge, and underneath the bridge was a pot of gold. And he woke up amazed and just stunned by the clarity of that dream. And he said to himself, I've never really followed my dreams. So my grandmother always said to wait for 3 signs, and that was only one. The next night he had the same dream, and the night after that, the exact same dream. And so he said, that's it, I'm going. I'm walking to Vienna. He got his backpack on. It took him 3 days, and he got there. And to his amazement, he saw there was that palace. And next to that palace was that bridge. And as he grew closer, he also saw that there was a fence and a moat because it was a palace. And he was sort of peering around looking for the gold. And a guard came up to him and spotted him and said, what are you doing here? And this peddler, he was honest. He didn't really know how to lie. He said, I got to tell you the truth. I had this dream. And I walked all the way here. And the guard started laughing. He said, who follows their dreams? What kind of fool are you? And the guard said, just last night, I had a dream that there was a pot of gold buried underneath the kitchen in this old, broken down home with this rickety door outside of Prague. Do you think I'm going to go do that? And the peddler, recognizing the description of his own home, just got his backpack on and went back as fast as he could. He got home. He got out his shovel and his hammer, and he went into the very floor of his own home in the kitchen, and he found what had been there the whole time, a pot of gold. And sometimes we have to leave home in order to find it. And the mystery for me that I've been reflecting on since being here is what is home, really? Because when I was younger, I thought home was my own culture and tradition. And I went out and I explored a world outside of that and spirituality, and it led me right back to where I found this gold that had been there the whole time. But coming here has reminded me how much these spaces, these universal places, feel like home as well. So whether it's the gold within or the quest that we're sent on, I just really wanted to share that story.
Thank you.
And I said there was one other, but I want to give room for others to talk, so we'll keep it there for now.
Other comments? Anything that you thought about or would like to share?
Yes. For me, it's rather strange to say what I'm going to say, but I'm fascinated for what I have been studying. I have been studying the Mahatma letters for the last 15 years, and the more I study, the more I like. It's like this are not these are life ideas that we can bring it to us. We are all seen it. We are all Francesca Arundel. We are all Fern. We are all these characters there. And it felt so good to share with you. It was really an amazing experience to be among you, talking about things that I'm in love with.
Thank you. So I will open it. Is there anyone in the audience who has something they would like to share? Chad over here. Hang on and wait for John to bring you.
Thank you so much. This has been an absolute wonderful experience for me, a new experience for me. And the question I have is I'm just asking a clarification, perhaps from each of you. Throughout the last 2 days, I've heard a lot of capital T truth and small t truth. And my understanding, which I'm hoping you'll correct or advise, is that capital T truth is synonymous with deity or the creator, and that lowercase truth is the one that we use when we say be truthful, be honest, etc. That one is accessible to us. Is capital T truth, although there seems to be a call to pursue it, is that just suggesting that we become closer to knowing the divine? Or is it, because I'm confused about the way we use truth, and it seems like capital T truth is not the truth that we use in our daily lives.
The way I was using truth, small t and capital T, was the small t truth could be having a pretty transient existence. It's the truth of small matters, small spaces, small minds. Believe me, that's my truth. And it's so small because it butts out somebody else's truth. If truth is truth, it has to be truth for everyone at the same time, in the past, in the present, and in the future. Truth is always dharmic. And I often have verses to go with it, and I'm not going to speak verses every time when I respond, but I'll just say one thing. The Sanskrit word for truth is satyam. And what is satyam? Satyam tapate ravihi. It is because of that truth the sun shines. Satyam dharyante prithvi, because of which the earth oscillates. Satyam vayavo vanti, the air flows. Sarvam pratishtitam satyam, because of which all of us are dwelling in something deeper than all that's out there, confusing us. Half-truths, false truths, tiny truths, truths for which men die, but they may or may not be worth it. So for a spiritual person, which I think I am personally, I always have to evaluate that this wow moment of truth, is it really the truth for my neighbor too? Is it the truth for perhaps my enemy too, so-called enemy too? And so at least for me, the search always is the greater truth in which I can rest all my opinions. That's what I would say. I hope it helps you.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, truth with a capital T cannot be described by anybody. Because the Upanishads absolutely insist, neti neti, not this, not this. In fact, whatever can be described is not the truth.
Good idea. Yes, I have seen this concept of existence, of permanent existence and circumstantial existence, and it's like big truth and small truth. Well, in a certain level, we are all one, and unity of life is the only reality. But in the circumstantial level, my nose is not your nose, my hand is not your hand, so we have a circumstantial existence also, and we deal with both.
I resonate with what everyone's shared, and one way of saying some of that from a Jewish or Kabbalistic perspective. So in the Tree of Life, the central axis is known, all of the Sephirot are known by many names, but the central axis, it's coded with the ineffable name, the name that cannot be pronounced, the truth which cannot be said. Another name for that sphere, sometimes called Tiferet, is Emet. Emet means truth in Hebrew. And the first letter of that word, Aleph, is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The second letter of the word Emet is Mem, a middle letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And the Taf, the last letter of that word of truth, is the last letter of the alphabet. So they say that truth is true at every place, in every time. It stretches the entirety of existence from Aleph through Mem all the way to Taf. And in a way, we get glimpses and we can tap into that. I think there's something really profound about admitting a truth to ourselves, or in a process of forgiveness, of admitting truth to another. There's something really freeing about truth. But that quality of Tiferet and Kabbalah, it's endless. It keeps going. We can never quite reach it. So there's always more to learn. There's always more to share. But in a sense, just moments and glimpses of, whether that's capital T or lowercase t, I can't say, but admitting, whether to ourselves or to others, there's something essential about that in self-inquiry and in transformation.
Beautiful. Thank you all for those. Oh, okay.
I wanted to add just one
Yes,
thing.
please.
I love the word circumstantial truth. I love it. And I feel like we need to own that circumstantial truth and inform it with the eternal truth. And then we're good to go. You know? Yeah. Right. I'm going to borrow that term, circumstantial truth.
Thank
I
you.
also borrowed.
All right. Other comments or questions from the audience or from our online participants? We'd love to have you join us.
I can't remember who was talking about this, but somebody was talking about having disagreements in order, it may have been you, having disagreements in order to come to a higher truth or something like that. And I just wish you'd expand on that. And whoever said it.
Perhaps more than one of us said it. But
Would you like to go?
all right, yeah, if that's okay, I'll go first. So the way that it's described in the Talmud, which is, again, came out about 1,500 years ago, but it was a recording of many generations of conversations of sages. It's when two people who disagree come together with integrity, with what's called l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, for the highest good. In that disagreement, it's like our intellects are sharpened, as though we were sharpening knives or swords that could be sharpened than one another. That's one thing. We come to a greater capacity to think clearly when we disagree in that way. But the other thing that we discover is that there are things that neither of us had at the beginning. And it is possible, certainly, to have a truth in and of oneself, but in this great, diverse world with so many perspectives, often the truth lies between us. And it takes courage and authenticity as well as compassion to be able to participate in a constructive dialogue in that way. But the essential message is that we're never done learning, and that if we can find people that we disagree with, that we can participate in that process with in a constructive way, we build worlds together. We create ideas in mutual sharing and learning.
I think, Ravi, you talked about sacred disagreement, didn't you? Yeah, that's a good term, sacred disagreement. But in my book, Roar Like a Goddess, and in my life in general, I try to roar a lot. And the goddess roars three ways. In the Vedic Hindu mythology, there is Durga, who roars with righteous power. There is Lakshmi, who roars with dharmic prosperity. And there is Saraswati, who roars with understanding and illumination. So these roar qualities are different. And Shankaracharya, a great Advaita master from 8th century, has described 3 levels of reality in which we are participating in right now. And this level is the transactional reality where my nose is mine and your nose is yours. And it is a realm of duality, so to say. There is another reality going on right now. If there are 100 people in this room, there are 100 separate realities going on at our psychic level. We are interpreting the same thing differently. And so internal samsaras or internal worlds are being created. If we have 700 billion humans on earth right now, we have 7 billion samsaras, because each one walks around with their own, understanding, perception, analysis of it. And there is a third reality that we have to all wake up to, which is the eternal reality, the non-dual reality of oneness. As long as we are in this transactional reality, we are told in Vedanta, in these Vedic teachings, that you can't be sleepwalking through it. And there are people who are guided by different forces of the mind, known as gunas or qualities. There is the rajas quality, which is a distractible mind, a gossipy mind, a drama-bound mind. There is the tamas quality, the heavy mind, the lethargic mind, the self-sabotaging and other sabotaging minds. And then there are the sattvic minds, which are balanced and healing. If we are going to interact in the world, we are going to meet all kinds of minds, which are in degrees of sleepwalking, degrees of waking up, and there are some who think they are awakened, but they might be fast asleep on the wheel. And so we better have all our tools out. And this, the Veda gives us permission. And that is why the Vedic gods hold the kamal or the lotus in their hand, which represents peace and enlightened consciousness, but they also hold a sword on the other hand. And they usually have multiple hands, these deities, representing our multiple options. And it is not like they're holding the sword out. Maybe it's in the background. But there's the mala in their hand and the lotus and a blessing mudra and things like that. But we may need to have these sacred disagreements, as pointed out, to create for a future scenarios, as pointed out by Ravi, that it is a necessary aspect of a soul's evolution. And I'm going to say at this point that if we don't disagree, then we will agree to everything that is presented to us. And there would be no evolution whatsoever. Anytime there was a spiritual messiah, a light, a great mind, first they said no to whatever was being followed by the masses. They dared to see something different, they disagreed, and then we all collectively evolved to a greater reality. Disagreement is inbuilt into evolution. And anyone who has put aside their disagreement option is suffering. And we need to be able to disagree, of course, dharmically, consciously, and spiritually is what I would say. So roar with a no.
Let me have a disagreement with her a little bit.
Let's go for it.
It's a very common practice, as she actually emphasized, that tamas refers to a guna of laziness or non-action. Therefore, I would ask her, Shiva, who is the Lord of Yoga, Lord of Wisdom, his guna is tamas. So why should I accept what you just said?
Do you want me to answer?
Then I'll have something else to say. Yeah.
Because we are going to show you how to continue to disagree and evolve the conversation. So our deities show a connection with each of the gunas, because these gunas are part of the fabric of existence, but they are always transcendent to the guna. They are all, because even the tamas guna we need in the body to fall asleep, we need tamas. To be at rest, we need tamas. To be in stillness, we need tamas. But the quality that we are talking about is when it becomes too much, it is not discerned, and it leads to laziness and stuckedness, which is not Shiva.
Did you want to respond, Ravi? I didn't. I was waiting. I wasn't sure.
Well, tamas is often understood only as laziness, but it also means firmness. Shiva is firmly seated. He is not easily distracted. So he can be in meditation for, as it is said in the tradition, for years without being moved, without being upset. So what sometimes gets taken as laziness can also mean I'm not easily going to accept something. I'm firmly inside. So it's not laziness about agreeing with you or disagreeing with you. It is more to say that something needs to be understood by me deeply inside.
In a positive sense, yes.
Yes, yes. Well, in the Mahatma letters, there is a passage where Hume was writing articles every month, and there was a moment that he left that behind, and Sinnett assumed these articles, and there is a passage where I think it's Mahatma Maurya that says, "Let the spiritists bring their silly arguments so that the thing becomes discussed and becomes alive." So we must bring the words from that letter to living realities. And discussion and disagreement, it's a way of putting the thing alive, to understand. It's not just to repeat what is it in the book.
Well, just to say, I'm agreeing with a lot here that I'm listening to and learning the whole time. It's wonderful. Just riffing off what others have shared, there's something about, on one hand, a passivity where we don't engage, and on the other end, deconstructive or damaging arguments and disagreement. And really, the goal is finding that middle ground where we don't have to pretend. We're not making up that we're agreeing or something like that, but we're also not shouting or worse. And it really is, what else can we do to bring harmony in a fractured world but engage with difference and like it's finding harmony amongst duality. So disagreement in a constructive way is just the verbal human to human way that manifests, but it connects in with a much wider and deeper idea of finding unity amongst diversity.
Wow. I don't know about about you, but I certainly needed to hear that about sacred disagreement. And we'll take that and ponder it a good bit. I think we have another question from the audience.
Thank you very much. What I'm seeing in the way of disagreeing is the word dis, like in dis-ease, or distress. So to agree with somebody In the ancients, they would have arguments, and the arguments in like the Platonic dialogues. So I think we're using words, and the words with the dis in front of it. If we could just drop the dis, and things might work out a little better, and learn how to argue, and learn how to debate. It's a form of dialogue.
Thoughts or responses
In
to
the
Michael?
in the ancient text Charak Samhita, from which I quoted environmental connections with dharma, there is a whole chapter actually on how to argue, or how to disagree, and conscious disagreements. And there are different terms. I'm not an expert on that chapter, but it talks about the kind of disagreements that would create more disturbing energy. Because one thing was clear, it's a medical book, and it was clear that medical scholars need to be able to dialogue and have differing opinions for the growth of the science. And so there is a whole chapter on that. So I think what you're pointing out to is the use of words, definitely. So I think the panel would agree. Would you like to add something?
So I want to add a Hebrew term. The word for this kind of disagreement is machloket. And what that has the root of chelek, which means portion or a part. It doesn't, there's no sort of negative like dis in the word machloket. It means that each of them has a section or a piece, and they're basically pitting them against each other to see what will arise. So it doesn't have an inherent negative connotation in the Hebrew. It's really about you've got a piece and you've got a piece and you've got a piece, and let's see what arises when we bring those together.
Wonderful. Thank you. Isis?
Yes, I remember in Zen Buddhism, they say that if you say yes or if you say no, you are both wrong because it's a part. If you say yes, you agree. If you say no, you disagree. So it's a question of going beyond the words. So just agreeing and repeating what you say, or just rejecting what you say, they are both limited actions.
I think one other piece is being of good faith, because this kind of constructive dialogue, argumentation, it's hard to have that function if one out of the two is attempting to manipulate the other. I really mean that. Like, it's about being credible and coming from a place of truth as much as we can, and being of good faith. So it's an essential ingredient in that kind of dialogue.
But I think I have to say it. Sometimes I'm not going to dialogue. Sometimes I'm going to disagree. I'm sorry. And that still keeps me spiritual and sound. Because sometimes the person in front of you is not of a capacity to dialogue with you. They are there in a rejecting manner. They are there to hurt you, and they are there to dismiss you. And that is what the Mahabharata was all about. Because Arjuna wanted to dialogue. Arjuna had sent several emissaries to sort the battle out, to prevent it. So what I want to say is that I don't want to hesitate. It's not my first option. That is a inner commitment we can have. But I'm not going to hesitate in disagreeing to something that is destructive to me and to my world. I will not hesitate.
I agree.
All right.
She wants to say.
I think we have an online question, comment? Yeah, and then Susan.
I think the question may have been kind of motivated from this discussion is, do you have any comments? This is more than just disagreements. Do you have any comments, advice, suggestions with how to respond or address the violent and very disruptive actions that seem to be animating internationally today?
Yes.
Such easy questions, please.
Well, I think we are facing a change, a turning point in the world where values have to be changed. Unless they are changed, maybe the whole thing is destructed. So it's the moment urges for better values, and this is a very good opening for theosophies, for religions in general, to show the value of life, the value of human society, and not only pride and power and money and all this stuff. So I think we are in a turning point in the world, and our ideas are more needed than maybe not in other times.
There is a very strong suggestion in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna.
Ravi, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you hold it a little bit closer?
Oh, okay. Krishna is a friend of mine, so I can speak on his behalf. He very strongly recommends to undertake the right action carefully, but without being attached to the fruit of that action. Because the fruit of action is not wholly determined by what I think the way it should be, what I have done. There are several factors that are given. Of course, the quality of action and the quality of the actor is important. However, there is an expression in Sanskrit called daivam. Little difficult to translate, but it basically would mean what is the will of God or the will of the devas. So not everything in my life depends on my action or my initiative. If one actually begins to understand this, then one realizes there are many higher forces. And then the call in any spiritual practice, as far as I can understand, is how do I become a little bit more perceptive to those higher forces? How do I relate with them? How do I listen to them? And not simply asserting myself, my action, my result, etc., etc. So,
Thank you.
If someone is feeling overwhelmed by all that's happening in the world and feeling helpless or hopeless to make significant change, on one hand, it might be an indication to take a break from the news. It might not be helping to keep going down that particular rabbit hole or drinking from that well. There is a balance to be struck in all of this. And on the other hand, it's important to find ways that we can make a difference, each of us as individuals, that things that are within our capacity. Speak very broadly, things like voting in our democracies or galvanizing for votes and things like that, but also just simple acts of kindness or prayer or presence as much as we can if things are truly not in our hands at any given moment. I'll also say that everything that was said, I mean, besides perhaps some of the disagreements on the topic of disagreeing, I think is very valuable here as well. It's important to know that wherever we're getting our news from, I don't think there's such a thing as the news anymore. I think everything is coming from a particular perspective, and it's important to be aware of that. And there's such a thing as a credible source, and there's such a thing as a non-credible source. If we can find spaces where credible sources from different parts of the spectrum are dialoguing with each other, or if we're intentionally looking at different areas along the spectrum amongst good faith, intelligent places where people can interpret what's going on and report it. I think that's a very healthy thing to be doing right now, and to be very aware of propaganda and messages that are just not helpful, and to put those aside, because there is such a thing as reality still out in our world, and it can be difficult to discern, but it's very important to try as much as we can to find what's actually going on, and then to ask, what can we do with this information?
Oh, yesterday I talked a little bit in my presentation about how the grandfather of my father fight against slavery in Brazil, and he died before slavery was eventually abolished. But I'm completely sure, and my father also, that people like him and others made possible to slavery to be abolished. And social changes are slow, but it's like that. Maybe you have heard about the 100 monkey, right? There is a critical mass that has to push in the collective mentality of the time that make changes possible, and political changes also. So I think we have to work firmly in fighting against the slavery of our time, fighting against power, against imposing by arms, and all the stuff that we see around. And there will be a critical mass, and it will change. But we don't expect to be tomorrow morning. Social changes take time, but they do change.
You're reminding me of that one of the differences between a butterfly and a dragonfly is that dragonflies molt and they transform gradually, sometimes 13, 14 transitions slowly, and they start under the water as little tiny bugs, and we see them in their last phase when they're flying around, and they're unbelievably efficient at what they do. And that kind of gradual transformation that you're speaking of for society is something I think that's also very valuable when we think about ourselves and how we transform, versus the butterfly, which is an amazing thing, or just completely melting down and then reemerging as a brand new being. What a wonderful vision. And also, that can be a bit catastrophic as well when we think about change. So in my own approach, at least, both internally and ideally in the external world, these are things that come one step at a time so that they can be both transformational and integrated.
Acharya, Ravi, would you like to add anything?
If we read up on history or watch some history documentaries, I like to do that, we will realize that what we are facing is not new. And the most torturous battles have been fought within humanity and different divisions of humanity. People of the same colored skin have fought over different versions of religion. Protestants, Catholics, Hindus have fought amongst themselves, Muslims, then with each other. So it's ongoing and it's barbaric. And this is our legacy. So let's wake up and smell the coffee that we live on a pretty unevolved planet. And different power groupings keep changing. So first of all, we should be a bit more resilient and a bit more informed that these things happen all the time. Anything can erupt anywhere, and we live on a pretty unpredictable planet. One. Number two, if this is your battle, if you're really involved in it, then use dharma to discern and align yourself with the right motive. Because we cannot tell you which is the right side. That is not our job. That is for you to discern. And maybe shift your allegiances once dharma tells you what is the right thing. But that inner inquiry, that work you have to do. But if this is not directly your battle, and if you are caught up in it, you are a victim, take care of yourself. If you're simply worrying, stop worrying, rest, regroup, and let it go. Because this universe is like an ocean with waves. Sometimes it rises, sometimes it drops. And then you think, yay, we're dropping, then it will rise again. Yay, we're rising, it's going to drop again. So this is an unpredictable landscape. That is why we are into spiritual work, to understand something very predictable inside ourselves. So let us sit in that inner anchor is my suggestion, whether it is war or peace outside.
Thank you. I think we had another question from the audience. Yes, it's Susan.
Of course, my question keeps evolving as I listen and as I listen to the other questions. So the question now, in this moment, is what do you think the role of thought forms are in creating harmony and peace on the planet? Our own thought forms and our collective thought forms.
From my understanding, if there is peace and harmony in me, it naturally radiates something for people around me. And depending on the quality of my being, correspondingly there are larger number of people. For example, somebody like Krishnamurti's presence influences a hell of a lot more people than my presence does. I think it's always so eager that one wants to reform the outside world. What is much more important is to reform the inside world, which was more or less the implication here from her. And I think it's always easy to wonder what I should do outside. Look at the harmony inside. That's at least my suggestion.
May I disagree? I think the harmony outside is very important, and the Mahatmas, they are working for humanity as a whole, but we cannot cooperate with that without having harmony inside. So you cannot give what you don't have. So you must get harmony if you want to fight for a better world. But I think, from my point of view, thinking about the plan of the Mahatmas, I think they think of humanity as a whole. They are not interested in you or me, but we can be agents of the plan that they have for the world, and for that we have to create this harmony inside ourselves.
Peaceful thought patterns are necessary but not sufficient for building a peaceful world and for striving for that. The way I approach this kind of question is through the lens of at least the modern version of the four worlds of Kabbalah: body, heart, mind, and soul, physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. It is possible, and in fact happens all the time, to be a good person, to act with kindness and with charity, and to not be still on the inside. I'm sure we all know people like that. They're charitable, they're kind, they don't insult others, all those kinds of things. They're good people, and they're not necessarily at rest in here. That being said, if we can find an inner tranquility or find ways of unifying disparate ideas, self-awareness, but also just having a mind that can see beyond the surface and to find wisdom, opportunity, inspiration underneath, that's really helpful. But we probably know people who can do that and aren't necessarily kind all the time or charitable, maybe even compared to the people who are feeling uneasy within. But the goal, in my view, is to find harmony in all of those worlds. None of them is sufficient, and they're all necessary. So thought forms are one avenue towards the greater good. But it takes all of the levels that we can access to really bring that.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I wanted to come back to something Ravi mentioned, Devam. And it brings us back to not everything being in our control. And so there are these cosmic forces also mentioned by Isis. So we may give them different names and different understandings, but there are cosmic forces that are creating these situations for us, maybe for humanity to test itself, strengthen itself, find itself. So there is more than just the thought form being the only driver of our evolution, I would say. Yeah, that's what I'd like to add. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? It's kind of interesting. We've covered so many topics, and now a great way to end for me is to think about self-realization. And you made a striking statement that self-inquiry is, I believe you said, the only path to self-realization. Or I'm just wondering, I'm very interested in realization, but then the role that self-inquiry plays, and many times I may find myself involved in self-inquiry, but it's not super productive. Have you had experiences where a person by themselves can profoundly carry out self-realization? I mean, the average person, like, no, yeah.
Well, we are all average persons. No, I think this is where question of really impartial and steady self-observation brings energy from a different level in oneself. Because in a certain way, all levels exist in us, from the divine to the demonic. And impartial self-study or self-observation, staying with it longer and longer, without immediately wanting this change or that change, gradually brings a transformation. That's both my experience as well as my, if you like, a theoretical understanding.
So in my case, if I'm really interested in self-realization, and I say, like, I've been working on this for some time, is it not better to seek a teacher, to seek someone who has this knowledge, who can help you? I mean, I was struck that you said self-realization by itself. I mean, self-inquiry is the path to self-realization without me being instructed.
No, but what will be the instruction? Look deeply inside. That will be the instruction. You can read Krishnamurti or you can read any other teachers. That's what they advise.
Yes, but what's the value of a personal teacher?
Yeah, well, personal teacher can have more impact on you. That is true.
Yes.
And therefore you could take it more seriously. If you actually met Krishnamurti, you might take his remark much more seriously than just reading something.
Yes, and you had the opportunity to know Krishnamurti. I saw him just once, but yeah, so I'm on the speed trip, and I think I'm going to need some help.
I'm afraid I can't claim that I have been transformed completely. But that doesn't mean that I should stop deeply looking at myself, what stands in my way. And everything ultimately really comes down to some kind of self-acquisition or self-importance. The trouble is, one of the things which is very important to understand, really, in fact, my teacher, Jean de Salzman, in the Gurdjieff teaching, very strongly emphasizes this, that ego is a good servant, but a bad master.
So you had a teacher.
without the ego, one cannot do anything in life. As I often remind, if I had not written some books, do you think they will invite me here to talk?
I was invited.
So one needs to be careful about not being against the ego. But if the ego takes over, then it does not realize the subtle spiritual energy that is keeping me alive, to which I need to submit.
I want to offer another perspective. For myself, my most transformational teachers, the relationship has often involved me sharing my inner world out loud with them and them being able to hold that and to help me work through it live, verbally. It's been very much an external. I've had a lot of internal transformational kind of intentions and moments as well, but I think there's something very valuable in finding someone who can hold space for your process to articulate itself and to be met from the outside with wisdom that can help point you towards inner awareness and depth.
I think I would also like to add,
Yes,
and I agree with
Me too.
both of them essentially, but I just wanted to add a Vedic three-step process, and that the self-inquiry is really important. It's in the middle, and we have a word for it, mananam. We contemplate, and it's done on your own, and there is no start or end to it. It's ongoing. And anybody who says I don't do self-inquiry, don't trust them, because they haven't digested, they're just parroting, simply. So self-inquiry is key. But we do add a step just before that, which Ravi is also alluding to, you're also alluding to, which is known as receiving from the ear, shravanam. So you hear a teacher or a master guide you. And nowadays they don't talk so much as they can also write for you, thanks to the printing press, right? Earlier they would only speak, then it was written down. So there is some reception. But say Ravi spoke for 1 hour. You can't remember everything he spoke, can you? But there may be one thing that really strikes you. Now you want to take that and do self-inquiry on that piece for years on end, so that when you meet Ravi again, you can say, you changed my life. But actually, it's your self-inquiry that changed your life, right? Because you take it inside and it turns around. So there is some input, answering your question, there's some input, but that's ego. And the third level, again, a very big word, so I shouldn't even say it. But the third word means you then practice it. Means whatever you have assimilated, you practice.
Go ahead, Isis.
Yes, yes. Yes, I think external help exists. Many people influence us, and we get inspiration from many people outside. But if you don't bring this to your own self-inquiry, it's just words that enter here and come out here. So, in fact, the influence that other people can have on you, the teachers, the gurus, or whatever, if it doesn't come inside into your own process of self-inquiry, it's just words. So you cannot deny the influence of other people, but finally, the responsibility of any change or any understanding is upon you.
So I'm going to, we're 2 minutes beyond our time frame. And I love working with Theosophists because there are always questions that keep us going. And I love stopping when we haven't answered all of the questions, because that gives us all something to think about, to ponder, and to come back next year for. Before I give this over to our president, I just from here would like to thank all of you. Did you want to say something,
I was
Ravi?
going to make a remark from Joy
Please.
She said, when a theosophist goes to be checked by St. Peter asks him whether you would like to go to heaven or somewhere else. The theosophist said, I would like to go where they're having a discussion about heaven.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. That's so true of us. So thank you to all of you for sharing your time, your wisdom, and yourselves with all of us this afternoon. Thank you.